Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why personality tests sometimes feel a little off when you take them, or why we seem to think people from different cultures are just different? Well, this new study might have a clue. It turns out that the tools we use to measure personality might be the problem, especially when we use them to compare people from different backgrounds. This research dives deep into something they call the weird instrument problem. We all know that most of the research we have, especially in psychology, comes from people who are Western educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, or weird for short. But as scientists start to study people from all over the world, they often use the same tests and questionnaires that were first created for weird people. The big question here is, does using these weird instruments create a kind of trick, a bias, when we try to compare personalities across cultures? The researchers look specifically at personality psychology. They found that when personality tests designed for weird people are used in other cultures, they often show that people in those cultures have less complex personality structures. Think of personality structure like the different building blocks that make up our personality. In weird societies, we usually see about 5 or 6 main factors or types of personality traits. But in other societies, these same tests sometimes find only 2 or 3 factors. This paper proposes that this might not be because people in other cultures actually have simpler personalities, but because the instruments we're using are just not designed to pick up on the full picture in those cultures. It's like trying to measure the entire ocean with a teacup, it just won't work. So, how do scientists measure personality structure? They often use something called factor analysis. Imagine you have a bunch of different ways to describe people, like talkative, shy, friendly, grumpy. Factor analysis looks at how these descriptions tend to group together for a lot of people. If talkative and energetic often go together, and shy and quiet often go together, factor analysis might suggest these are related to broader underlying personality factors, like extroversion or introversion. The more distinct groups or factors you find, the more complex the personality structure is considered to be. For example, the famous Big 5 personality model identifies 5 core factors like openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. These models were mostly developed using data from weird societies. The core idea is that there are hidden or latent psychological parts of us that influence how we act and what we say. These are the factors, the things we can see and measure, like our answers on a personality questionnaire, are the observable variables. Factor analysis helps us figure out how many of these hidden factors there might be and how strongly our observable behaviors relate to them. But here is where the problem comes in. Studies have shown that outside of weird populations, personality structures often appear less complex, with fewer factors. For example, research with Tsimane forager farmers in the Amazon found only 2 personality factors using a test designed for the US. This led to theories like the niche diversity hypothesis, which suggests that societies with fewer niches or roles for people to fill might lead to less complex personality structures. Think of a highly industrialized society with many specialized jobs versus a small farming community. This hypothesis was tested using computer models. Imagine agents with different traits that sort themselves into different social niches. Niches have ideal trait values. Agents move closer to those ideals once they pick a niche. The more niches, the more distinct groups of traits emerge, and factor analysis finds more personality factors. This model showed that more niches generally led to more factors. Researchers even created an index to measure niche diversity based on things like a country's exports, urbanization, education, GDP, and life expectancy. They found that lower niche diversities often corresponded with fewer personality factors. However, the paper points out a couple of potential issues. First, it's hard to directly identify these specific niches in societies. Second, measures like life expectancy don't seem directly related to the number of niches. Also, the index often just tracks socioeconomic status, and it's not a given that richer countries have more niches than poorer ones. Some developing countries might have a mix of traditional and modern roles, creating more niche diversity. This is where the current study offers a different explanation, the weird instrument hypothesis. They propose that the problem isn't necessarily the number of niches in a society, but the instruments we use to measure it. They created a model similar to the niche diversity one, but they explicitly modeled the process of designing an instrument. Imagine 2 societies that are equally complex, each having 6 niches, but they only share 2 of those niches. A personality test is designed based on the personality structure of one society, the reference society, which is usually a weird one. Then this same test is given to people in both societies. Even though both societies are equally complex, The test designed for the reference society is expected to find fewer factors in the novel society that shares fewer niches. The model showed that the more niches a novel society shared with the reference society, the more factors the instrument would find. If they shared no niches, the instrument would find very few factors, even if the societies were equally complex. The results clearly showed that instruments designed in one society tend to underestimate the complexity of other societies, especially those that are culturally different. The number of factors found by the test went down the fewer niches the novel society shared with the original society. This supports the idea that the test itself is causing the apparent difference in complexity. To make sure these findings weren't just tied to the specific niche sorting mechanism, they created a more general model. This model didn't rely on how niches create personality structure, but just assumed personality structure existed and could be modeled statistically. In this generalized model, they looked at salient factors, basically the underlying personality factors that influence people in a given society. They created societies that shared different numbers of these salient factors. An instrument was designed in a reference society. Then they tested how well this instrument measured personality in other societies that shared varying numbers of factors with it. The results were striking. The instrument consistently underestimated the complexity of novel societies. Out of thousands of societies simulated, the instrument only correctly identified the number of factors in the reference societies. For all the novel societies, it underestimated the factors, and in most cases, the number of factors it found was exactly the same as the number of factors that society shared with the reference society. This strongly suggests that the weird instrument problem is a major reason why we see fewer personality factors in non-weird populations. This is where the research gets really interesting. They asked if the instrument is biased by how different a society is. Does cultural distance from the place where the instrument was created actually predict how complex the personality structure appears? They used existing data on cultural distances between countries and how complex personality structures were measured by a common personality test. Since the test they looked at was developed in the United States, they used the US as the reference country. They found a clear negative relationship. The further away a country was culturally from the United States, the less complex its personality structure appeared when measured by the US design test. This is exactly what the weird instrument hypothesis predicts. They even did a further analysis, testing cultural distance from every single country against the personality's results. And what did they find? Cultural distance from the United States showed the strongest negative relationship with measured personality complexity. This means that the further a country is from the US, the more deeply it seems to underestimate its personality complexity when using a US-made test. This isn't just a fluke, it is a pattern. To confirm this, they went back to their simulated data from the generalized model. They calculated cultural distance between all the simulated societies and compared it to the number of personality factors found by the reference instrument. And again, they found the same strong negative relationship. The further apart two simulated societies were culturally, the less personality complexity the reference instrument found in the novel one. Just like with the real-world data, when they looked at cultural distance from the reference society in the simulation, it had the most uniquely negative impact on how many personality factors were detected. Now, like all studies, this one has its limits. For example, they assume that traits are uniquely tied to certain factors or niches, which might be a simplification. Real life is probably more complex. Also, the empirical part of the study has a challenge called multicollinearity, basically many country. Level factors are so closely related that it's hard to tell which one is causing what effect. For instance, cultural distance and socioeconomic status often go hand in hand. But the main takeaway is big. The weird instrument problem is likely a significant reason why we've observed less complex personality structures in non-weird societies. It is not necessarily that these societies are less complex, but that the tools we are using are biased. This bias isn't just limited to personality. It could apply to any research using instruments designed for one group and applied to another, like comparing men and women or different age groups. So what can we do? First, just being aware of this problem is a huge step. Knowing that the number of factors found in a different culture might be a lower bound on its true complexity is important. Ideally, we need to create new instruments designed with diverse populations in mind, or even instruments that work well across different cultures. This involves collaboration with local experts and people from those cultures. Even if perfectly comparing factor structures across cultures is tricky, we can still compare individual aspects or behaviors like specific answers on a questionnaire that might be less affected by this bias. At its heart, the paper calls for a deeper understanding of why these personality factors emerge and how our measurement tools might be distorting that reality. By modeling the process of instrument design itself, scientists can work towards creating fairer and more accurate cross-cultural comparisons. It's a reminder that science is an ongoing process of refining our questions and our tools to better understand the incredible diversity of human experience. So that's it for this Mind Lab episode. What do you think about the weird instrument problem? Does it change how you view cross-cultural personality research? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this interesting, please like this video and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more deep dives into the fascinating world of science. See you next time.